Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Filmmakers Life. My name is Joanne Butcher. I'm a business coach for filmmakers, and I'm really excited today to welcome Christopher Lockhart. I met Christopher. We just were going back over the years just before COVID started in 2019 in Trinidad and Tobago, where he was part of a whole Stage 32 weekend that they did there that was fabulous. It was really good. And Christopher taught screenwriting, and I've been following him ever since. And just, amazed really at how generous he is with what he has to share for screenwriters. So today we're going to follow the same format that we always follow with the filmmaker's life. I don't do a biography at the beginning because we're going, well, because you've already read it, but also because we're going to get there through the questions that I ask. So welcome, Christopher. Thank you for joining us. And my first question to you is, um, when did you first realize that you wanted to work in film, and how did that come about?
I think it happened in graduate school. And good morning, everybody, or afternoon, I guess, depending where you are. Um, I think it started really when I was in graduate school. I always loved films growing up, uh, but I aspired more toward theater. And maybe it was because theater seemed like it was more practical, it was there. I didn't have equipment to make films, so I never even really thought about making movies. It was more about like, look, we could just make a play anywhere. And so, I started out in the theater and junior high school, and then in college, I became a little more serious about it. I evolved into a playwright,
Oh.
and then I really took that seriously. And although I was gearing up to be a New York City school teacher, which I did do for a few years, I ended up going to graduate school at NYU in their dramatic writing program. And I went in as a playwright, but we were compelled to take screenwriting. Now, I'd actually taken a screenwriting course as an undergraduate, but it really ended up more like a play because I didn't quite understand the language of film yet. I didn't quite understand how to cinematize. I could understand how to dramatize, but I didn't understand how to cinematize. But when I was in graduate school, we had this really good introductory teacher who was actually able to instill in me the idea of film language. And I sort of like that. The very first real screenplay I wrote, I ended up optioning that. And this was at a time when, like,
Excuse me.
you,
Hello. Hello. Wait. Your first screenplay?
well, it was
You
my first, like, real screenplay, the one after that I wrote as an undergraduate. So it was, I guess, technically my second one, but it was a movie as opposed to the
Right.
other one, which was really a play that
A
just had a lot
play.
of fade-ins and
Yes.
stuff.
But
Yeah.
wait,
So,
Christopher, we
yes.
can't just pass over this. Okay,
Okay.
so
Okay.
how does it come that you're just recently graduated and you actually have a screenplay option? How does that
Well,
work?
I actually hadn't. I actually had not graduated. I was
Oh,
still in NYU. And actually it was a screenwriting contest. So there
mhm.
was a screenwriting contest that was sponsored by New Line Cinema.
Hmm.
And my script won that contest. And although the first prize was not an option,
Uh-huh.
I ended up optioning the script to them. And this was at a time when, like, options were like, real money. I got, like, I think it was 20 or $25,000 for the
Oh my
option.
God, that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, that, like, that paid for like like one class at NYU. So
I,
and I
I,
was like,
I I do think though that that's really a very cool thing, and that entering competitions, I mean, there are competitions and there are competitions, but some of them come with ancillary things for the prizes. Often it's to do with meeting producers, meeting production companies, and that kind of thing. I don't know if that competition still exists.
It doesn't. It was a competition that was for college students
Oh, I
um,
see.
at the time, and this was back. This was like 30 plus years ago. So I'm much older than I look. So it's so it was like it was like, wow, okay, like this is interesting. And then I was being sort of wined and dined by different people. This was, of course, in New York. It wasn't out here. But by the time I was done with graduate school, I was very enamored by film. I'd always loved movies. I was a huge movie buff, always. And so I just thought, let me go out to LA and kind of see what it's about. I always wanted to make movies. I wanted to produce movies. Didn't want to direct. Never had the desire to direct, but I wanted to kind of give it a try and just see what it was like. And so I moved it.
$20,000. So, hey.
Yeah, but for some reason I ended up only coming out with about 4,000. I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to. I don't really know what happened to that money. But I came out to Los Angeles and I didn't know a soul. I didn't. I had no place to live. I didn't have a car. I had no job. I didn't know anybody, and I just moved out here. And which is sort of not like me. I'm not particularly impulsive like that. And I was out here, and all I kept saying was, like, what did I do? What, am I crazy? I cried for 7 years. I'm not exaggerating. I was homesick for 7 years. Wow. For 7 years out here, I was homesick. And then just one day I was driving over the mountains toward Malibu. It was the most beautiful Saturday afternoon. And I just had an epiphany. And it was like, something? I actually love it here. And I was never homesick again. It was like that moment when Los Angeles became my home. I stopped saying things like, oh, I'm going home for Christmas, right? Now I say I'm going to New York for Christmas. I never say I'm going home for Christmas because this is my home now. But so, it was just, it was a good time. Graduate school was good because it helped me sort of understand the things that I wanted to do. And then moving out here sort of lit a fire under my ass. Had I stayed in New York, I feel pretty certain that I would be writing bad plays and teaching high school English.
And being very broke.
And being pretty damn broke, yeah. Although I would have tried to have married a rich woman.
Ah, yes. Well, you're a very smart man, so. So in those 7 years that you were being homesick, were you able to move your career forward, or were you, doing the LA waiting tables, or?
I was doing both. Yes. I was doing both. I never waited tables, but I definitely had my share of odd jobs. I don't think I've ever spoken about this before. I usually just try to gloss over this part. But yeah, let's see, what did I do? God, I don't even know if I should say this. All right, so I taught traffic school.
Oh, wow.
Which is cool. Where traffic offenders spend 8 hours in a class, and I did that. I had to be licensed by the state to do that. I guess, I don't know what the word is, counseled. I counseled overweight people at a diet center called Nutrisystem. I made $7.50 an hour doing that. And I taught at an Armenian school. I taught at an Armenian junior high school out here. The principal, he really wanted what he said, homogeneous staff, but he hired me because he was desperate, and he hated me, he despised me. So so I worked those kinds of
Yeah.
jobs.
I
And
just, I'm really grateful for you sharing this because I do think that these are normally the parts that people who've been successful in the industry s- eliminate from
oh,
this.
I have never, ever, ever shared this ever. So, right.
But it's the truth, it's the truth of building that career, and
Yeah,
that's kind of, what we're getting at. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's like I remember my my first place was in North Hollywood. And because I'd never been here, I didn't know north from south, east from west. I didn't know anything about Los Angeles, but I was like, I'm in Hollywood. I'm in North Hollywood, but I'm in Hollywood. But North Hollywood, actually, for anybody who knows, it's not Hollywood. It's like, it's kind of like Hollywood, Florida isn't Hollywood, California. It's almost the same thing. And from my kitchen window, I could see the Noggles taco sign. And it was like a fast food place. And I always thought, it's like I came out here to see like the lights of Hollywood, and all I can see is this Noggles taco sign. I was like, really? So, and there were a lot of lean times, dodging the landlord. Oh, I mean, it used to like I wouldn't park my car in the garage because the landlord would know that I was home. So I'd park it like a block away and sneak in. This is kind of fun talking about this. I kind of like getting it all out. I don't have to carry that shame anymore.
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, good.
No, because
And
everybody has to do it.
everybody's got to do it.
Even if they option their first script,
Right, right.
there's that, there's that
Yes. Oh,
dealing
oh,
with
oh
this.
yeah. Oh, it was like I came out here thinking I was hot shit, and it took all of about 1 week to realize you're a loser. So, but somebody that I went to graduate school with moved out here. And he was somebody that I didn't really associate with all that much in graduate school. When I was in graduate school, I didn't really have the typical graduate school kind of experience, especially being there in Greenwich Village, because I worked full time. I was a full time teacher while I went to graduate school full time.
Mm.
And the program actually kind of rearranged my classes. I would meet with some of my teachers one-on-one on like Friday afternoons. Lorenzo Semple, who wrote 3 Days of the Condor and The Parallax View, and created the Adam West Batman TV series. He was one of my teachers, and he graciously would meet me late Friday afternoons after I got out of school, and we would have class sometimes in his penthouse or sometimes at Eddie's, which was like a pub around the corner. So they really accommodated a lot of that stuff. So I never really got to network the way maybe that I should have. But this guy comes out and he reaches out and he says, hey, like we're both out here. Why don't we write a script together? And he pitched this idea, and I thought it was like a really stupid idea. And I really didn't like this guy all that much anyway. But I was like, something, let me give it a try, because maybe if two people are doing this, maybe, we'll have like that Wonder Twins power can be activated or something. And we ended up sort of writing a bunch of scripts together. We ended up getting an agent. We ended up doing a lot of work. We never had anything produced, but ended up really kind of starting to not make a great living, but making enough money where I didn't have to counsel overweight people anymore, right. That kind of thing. Right. And so we did that for 10 years almost.
Wow. Okay. That's so interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about finding a collaborator that they weren't particularly simpatico with. That's really interesting. I wonder.
And by the way, I should say now we're like brothers, even though
Right.
he no longer lives here. In fact, I'm going to see him in May over Memorial Day. He lives back east with his wife and his kids, and we are absolute family. And kind of going through those years and having somebody to commiserate with, somebody to travel that journey with, for me was really important. I understand that some people don't like to work with other people, but I do. And it actually laid the foundation for, I think, what it is that I do now at the agency, and because I obviously have to work with people all the time, and so it was really a great experience, and lots of highs and lows, and I think that I had a fairly typical sort of writer's career at that time, which is a lot of meetings, a lot of wheels spinning, a lot of development, and not much big success.
So when you were in all of those meetings and development, what was your strategy in terms of pitching? Did you go in with a bunch of projects that you could pitch? Did you focus on one? How did you strategize around that?
Typically we would pitch one project. And it's interesting too, because this was like, let's say we started in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And I remember we pitched to a lot of producers who hadn't even produced anything yet. Like, they had their offices in their homes, and their homes were unfurnished. And one of the producers that we met with was a man named Neil Moritz, who now, of course, has gone on to produce like the billion-dollar Fast and the Furious franchise, amongst a gazillion others. He is truly one of Hollywood's biggest producers. But I remember going in there and like botching up that pitch, like screwing up that pitch, and we left, and I was like, okay. So we screwed it up, but like, he's just as much of a loser as we are. So like, what does it matter? And then, now we see who the real loser is, because he goes on to glory.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. And I think that's a lesson for everybody in terms of networking. It's like you have no idea who you're speaking to.
No idea.
No idea.
It's like at work, I am always so kind to the assistants. The assistants get berated and beaten by everybody, and I am always so kind, because I've been in the agency business now for 25 years. So I have seen assistants become heads of production companies and lots of other crazy, powerful positions, of which now, they all add to my tree of my network,
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, connections.
Always.
So what changed from being the screenwriter pitching to shifting I think of it as being indoors?
Yes. Well, it was a sort of psychological thing. So my writing partner left. His wife got this amazing opportunity back east at a university, and he felt, look, she's been supporting my dream for 10 years. Now I have to support her dream. So he left. And this was really just before the internet. And so there wasn't really a mechanism in which we could kind of write together, other than maybe being on the phone or what. So I was in it alone now. And I was taking the meetings, and I got this job working for, it was Signature Entertainment, I believe is what they were called. They were on the lot at Sony. And I would go in and I would meet with one of the execs, and they'd give me notes. I'd go home and I would execute those notes, and I would come back for another meeting and meet with a different exec who would kind of scratch all those previous notes and then give, and it went around and around and around like this. And there was just sort of like a whole series, like my cat died, my brother who was living out here with his family moved away, I broke up with a girlfriend. It was just all of this stuff was sort of, I was like, okay. And it was my 10th anniversary out here. And I was like, all right, I'm like really miserable. I'm really unhappy. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then literally I get a phone call from ICM, from the office of Ed Limato. Ed Limato was the co-president and vice chair of ICM, which is a very large talent agency. And he was truly one of the probably top 5 talent agents in the world. He represented at that time people like Mel Gibson, Denzel Washington, Steve Martin, Michelle Pfeiffer, all at the very, very top of their careers. And he was looking for basically a script consultant, somebody who could look at scripts and make recommendations, because he couldn't read all of the material that was coming in. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to interview, just because why not? I had no desire to work at a talent agency. I didn't want to wear a tie. I didn't want to do any of that, but I thought, hey, it's like a day out, And so I went and I interviewed, and it was Ed Limato didn't suffer fools. So it was a pretty short interview. And I got escorted out. I figured it was done. And his number one assistant, because he had 3 assistants, his number one assistant escorted me into this tiny little closet with no windows that had a desk. It was often referred to as the Anne Frank suite. And so I was just kind of pushed in there. There was a shelf with like 300-400 scripts. And he said, okay, that's your phone, that's your computer, and you need to start reading those scripts. And I was like, oh, whoa, wait. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, no, you got the job. And I was like, oh, whoa, well, I only came for an interview, and he was like, well, look, if you want to go back in there and tell Mr. Limato that you don't want the job, go ahead. And he left. And I was like, oh my God. Like what am I supposed to do? And so I was given a directive to read two particular scripts for Mel Gibson. And I did that. And I came back to work the next day. I seriously considered not doing it, but I said, something, I'll work the week. And then at the end of the week, I will resign. But that very, very next day, I was called into Ed's office, and who was in the office with him but Mel Gibson? Now, again, Mel was the biggest movie star in the world at that time. And I spent about 20 minutes chatting about the 2 scripts that I had just read. And I thought, okay, that was kind of cool. And at the end of the week, I said, something, I'm going to stick around a while, because the money was okay. This was the closest that I had been to the business, the real business,
right?
In a decade. And it's 25 years later, and here I am.
Wow. So whatever happened with those 2 scripts that you talked about?
They were both made, neither with Mel Gibson. One was made with Mark Wahlberg. I can't remember what it was called. It was called, he plays like a hitman, but I can't think what it was called. And then the other one was made with, I think it was George Clooney and Catherine Zeta-Jones. It's like a divorce movie or something like that.
That one I remember.
Yeah, I'm really bad with titles now, because I have so many titles in my head that I just can't remember them all.
I'm bad with titles and names. So, remembering George Clooney and who was it?
Catherine Zeta, I believe. I
Already forgotten.
believe.
But
Yeah. Was it called Intolerable Cruelty? Maybe.
oh yes,
Maybe.
that one I remember.
Maybe.
Somebody just put that in the chat. So good
Okay.
job,
Okay.
filmmakers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Being
And I
on
think
it.
the other one was called The Shooter or something like that. And that was written by, I think, like a very well respected screenwriter. But again, it escapes me who, because it was like 25 years ago. So
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
got to give me a break.
No, it's no, it's amazing. But when you said about the 300 scripts, because I actually had a job where I was hired to read plays by the
Mm.
Coconut Grove Playhouse. That reminded me of that. And there was something else you reminded me of. But I love this story of, oh, I know what it was. One time, a lady came when I was running a film organization. This lady came and knocked on the door, and I said, "Oh, great! I'm so glad you're here." And I sat her down at the computer and I gave her some work to do. And after about 2.5 hours, she said, "I need to leave." And I said, "Oh, I thought you were staying till 2 o'clock." And she said, "No, I just came to pick up a flyer uh, and find out about your classes."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because let's face it, if there's like flesh and blood that
A
might be
body.
willing to read a script, let's keep them. You know, when I was at NYU, I did a couple of internships. So the very first internship, I read scripts for Columbia Pictures, and then I read scripts for the Manhattan Punchline Theater. So I was reading a lot of plays also when I did my internships. So I had a little bit of experience with reading scripts, but like ultimately, what did I really know? And so it taught me a lot, I think, sort of like, while I understand that I have been doing this for a very long time and that my opinion perhaps might be maybe a little more informed than other people's, because my opinion is also based on what's getting made and sort of how things are made and how people who greenlight movies respond to things. That's stuff that I didn't know way back when. But
Right.
ultimately, it's 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 an opinion. It's like it's just an opinion. My opinion is no better than anybody else's opinion. And I always say, really, a monkey could do my job, almost.
I
Um,
really buy that
no, it's
because
true. It's true.
you were thrown in the room with the 300 scripts, and I can't remember how long you said later, but you were able to pick out those two scripts that you talked about that ended up getting produced. And to me that says a lot about what what you saw, what your eye is, what you were able to pick out of that pile, because I'm
Right.
sure those two I'm sure not all those 300 scripts were worthy of being produced.
Right. And that is, of course, very kind of you to say, but I will sort of, pull the curtain back a little bit and just, it's like when you work at that level,
Uh-huh.
I'm not getting a lot of trash scripts.
Ah,
I
okay.
mean, yes, I do get some really bad stuff, but the preponderance of what I read is is at least good.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of stuff that I pass on, I don't pass on it because it's bad. I
Mm,
pass on it because it's not right for the people that I'm trying to find projects for.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, so it's like if you're sending material to Denzel Washington, and like you're managing to get that script through the maze until it gets to me, then that script's got to have some quality somehow, some way. And that doesn't always work out that way. But
Mm.
so I'm kind of lucky in that respect that it's not like I'm a contest reader, where I'm reading a lot of bad screenplays by a lot of amateur screenwriters.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Sorry for any of you that are, sending your scripts to contests.
Um, so how many years did you say you spent with Ed?
I've worked with Ed until he passed away. And so that was, I believe, 12 years.
12 years.
And
Wow.
so we went from ICM And then we moved to the William Morris agency, and we were there for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, William Morris merged with Endeavor. And then
Yeah.
it became WME, the powerhouse that it is today.
Yeah.
And so Ed died shortly after that. So I was kind of rudderless in the sense that I didn't have a beacon like Ed, with whom I was working, but I still had the clients. And so ultimately,
right.
those are the people that I work for. So
Yes.
it's like I've been working with Denzel Washington since my very first day back in 1998, right up through today, right up through his Academy Award nomination for the tragedy of Macbeth.
Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo!
And so, you know, like that's who I work for. Like they are my employers. That's the way I see it.
I see. That's very, very interesting. And so, actually looking at it like that, that they're your employers. So then is part of your work to actually find the scripts, or is it somehow the scripts get to you and
Yeah,
then
thankfully the scripts come to me.
come to you?
Right, because like Denzel Washington is a pretty big magnet, right? You know, you can only imagine. And so, yeah, so I don't have to. There was a time when I might sort of fish around, or if it was a client, certainly not somebody like Denzel, but if it's, you know, maybe more of an up and coming client or something like that, I might sort of actively pursue that. But there are other people in the agency who will often do that kind of thing. I think what I tend to do more of is what I call bait and switch, where a script comes in for one client, and then I make a recommendation that it go to a different client. So like when I was at ICM and Mel was the #1 movie star in the world, we got everything. And for an agent to have a client like that, the agent gets all the best material in town, and then he can siphon from that one client the material to, you know, off to other people, because an actor maybe can only make 1 or 2 movies a year. And so all those other scripts go to other, you know, they go to other places. So the screenplay for Taken came to me from Mel Gibson. And I read it, and he'd already done a movie called Ransom. And Liam Neeson was a client. And I thought, hey, like, I think this might be really great for Liam. You know, he had just done the Star Wars movie, you know, he had done Rob Roy, so we know that he could kick some ass. And so, like in the long run, Liam Neeson ends up doing that. It changes his whole career.
Exactly. Yes.
Changed. I love to say that. And good for Liam. He's no longer a client, but still, you know.
But that's interesting to see when a client, when not a client, but from my perspective, when an actor has a piece of work that shifts their career. I'm thinking about Matthew McConaughey. You know how he had such a massive shift in the kind of role that he played, and I was like, somebody there was very smart.
Well, you know, he was a client also.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe you were the smart person.
Maybe, who knows? Yeah. So I think that, you know, maybe we're seeing that now with Nick Cage. You know, he just did Pig. He's got this The Unbearable, blah 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 blah. It's a long title. You know, and he's been making a very certain kind of movie, and you know, now because he is truly one of our great American treasures, Nick Cage. He really is, because he's so daring. You know, as an actor, he's daring. He's brave. You know, he's bold, and
but Pig was so satisfying to see that level of talent being used to that standard,
Yes.
I don't think that's the word I was looking for, but to have that a place to play in,
Right.
as opposed to being limited into something that's not big enough for him.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget he's an Oscar-winning actor,
Yes,
so right.
yes.
So I agree with you. Yeah, it's fun to see that shift.
So how did you manage to be in this very big career and also produce films yourself?
Well, I always wanted to produce, but it was hard because the agency job is very time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of fell into producing. Again, I wanted to do it, but it's sort of like a lot of things, right? It's like I wanted to have a kid, but there was never really a right time to have a kid. And then there was an accident and now I got a kid, right? So
Congratulations.
but well, he's 13 years old, but thank you. So like sometimes kind of accidents are great, right? Because you can kind of back into things. So it started with a movie called The Collector. It's a horror movie. It's, like a $1.5 million horror movie. And but one of the writers had been an intern of mine at ICM. And then I eventually hired him to read scripts.
Mm.
And he and his writing partner went on to win one of the Project Greenlights. If you remember that, it was that HBO series. And so they won, I don't know, maybe like the third one or something, the second or third one. And it was a horror movie thingamajig and stuff. And so coming off of that film hadn't yet been released. And so they were very cold, nobody was really sort of interested in working with them. And they had this pitch and he pitched it to me. And I said, wow, like that's really good. I know somebody, they have development money. They don't produce per se, but they have development money and they can develop this project for you, with you and pay you, and then potentially try to sell it. And so I hooked those people up. I was right. They loved the idea. So, and then I introduced them to another producer, my friend Julie Richardson, who produced the movie Collateral, the Michael Mann movie. And she had developed that from scratch with Stewart Beatty. And I said, look, like, I think that if they have a weighty producer on this, that maybe the movie could actually get made. And she didn't want to do a horror movie, but I kind of talked her into it. And then when they started to develop the script, the writer said, look, we want Chris to help us to develop the script. So we're all on a meeting, all of the producers that I brought to this project, and then the writers, and then me volunteering my time. Nice. And it just sort of dawned on me. And I said, I stopped the conversation. And I said, listen, by the way, everybody, I'm a producer on this too.
Yes.
And there was a pause. And they were like, okay. Later on, they tried to shaft me a little bit, like you got to fight a little bit, but still. And so that was sort of how that worked. Well, and then that movie was successful, and we ended up doing a sequel to it, a $15 million sequel. So now I was producing a much, much bigger movie. And in between that, I produced a documentary for $400,000 that ended up being acquired by OWN. We made back all our money. We made more money. It's been seen around the world. And so just as the ball got rolling, I divorced. And so now I had this young son, and I was like, I can't, I can't do both. I can't be a dad and work at the agency and produce. I can't do that. I
Uh-huh.
had to, I had to devote time for my son. But in the last few years, my kid's older. He doesn't love me anymore. He's not interested in spending one solitary second with me. And so yes, exactly. So I kind of kicked it back into gear a little bit. So,
Well,
and
I,
so
I want to,
it's been
I
fun.
just want to say, so horror is not necessarily my favorite genre, but so I watched The Collector for um, for this movie. It was so good, and there were many,
I
many.
don't always hear that. So
Oh no,
I don't always hear that. So thank you.
oh no, many, many levels. It was good. But I guess it's kind of obvious that the script was really good. I mean, there's a sort of a tightness to it. It has kind of that micro. We don't consider 1.5 million micro, but it has that one house kind of feel to it. Um, it was absolutely terrifying. I didn't have the guts to watch the sequel.
It's
But
all right.
the thing that I want to,
It's so dumb. The
oh,
sequel's so dumb.
I guess that's what happens when you have $15 million. But
You just
anyway,
you make a dumber movie. Yeah.
but I have to say, Josh Stewart is unbelievable.
Well,
And
I think a lot of the movie works because
oh,
he's so likable. And although he has a lot of bad luck in the
yes.
movie,
And
he's
he's the
still
bad guy. And he's the bad guy.
and he's an anti-hero. But he is resourceful, and
Uh-huh.
he's making kind of the right choices. For
Most
the
of the
most part.
time.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
yeah,
But
yeah, and
that's also interesting. I mean, all of those character. I mean, to me, that he could have been so much less complex as a character. I think that that's kind of a decision perhaps people make when they're working in genre. They forget that you can have So there are some moments there where you're like, oh my God, he's really going to do the wrong thing, you know
right.
and maybe he does and maybe he doesn't, and but you never are quite settled with how he's going to go. And I think that's really, for me, that's one of the pleasures of really good writing, is to have characters that are that complex and are
Yeah,
that much closer to human beings than two dimensional characters
right.
like you see in movies. Um
You
but
know, I think my disappointment with the film, and I'm on record already saying this, is that it was too violent.
it is
I,
very
I
violent.
yeah, I wish that it didn't go the torture porn route
Uh-huh,
because
uh-huh.
it didn't need to.
Yeah.
Because it really could have been a very tense, scary thriller without having to see people's bowels and like I get a lot of the violence in it, but it just, for me, I was always fighting to try to make it
Uh-huh.
just tone it down a little bit
Uh-huh.
because when it was originally pitched to me in my office, I just loved the idea of this thief who breaks into a house to steal something, and then he spends the rest of the movie trying to break out of the house.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that irony. And the violence was not ever really part of that pitch. Yes, there were traps and blah blah blah, but it wasn't going to be so sort of so super gory.
Hmm.
But there were a lot of great things. We shot that in Shreveport for the most part, and we shot it on 16 millimeter, which was
Ah,
really neat because we wanted to give it like a grindhouse look
yes.
to
Yes.
it, and we actually shot the sequel on film also, 35, and probably one of the last horror movies
Oh,
to
wow.
be shot on film.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I was very impressed with it. But as I said, Josh Stewart, to me, I sort of have looked to see what he's been doing since, and I'm not quite sure why he's not just some massive star. Is what an amazing presence.
Yeah. He's kind of like he's like a sleepy Sean Penn in some ways, because he has those he has those very heavy eyes. But yeah, he is wonderful to work with, and like a real trooper. I got to tell you, a real trooper. He's an actor's actor.
Uh-huh.
That's for
Uh-huh.
sure. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Superb, superb. I felt like, oh, I discovered somebody,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
not
Well,
exactly true, but that's what it felt like when I watched the film. Um,
he plays Bane's right hand man in uh, in the Batman movie, whichever one that was. Like it
uh-huh.
was like the third one or something. The Christopher Nolan one.
Aha, nice, nice. Well, Christopher Nolan knows an actor when he sees one. um, but so nowadays, what is the most fun for you about your work, whether as a story editor or as a producer? What do you enjoy the most, and what are you looking forward to doing?
I always love to talk about story. That's what I do. And so for me, that's always the most fun. Um, Making a movie is a little bit of a grind. Trying to put a movie together, I'm in the process of that now, and it's it is a very different process all of a sudden than it was just a few years ago, and it seems to be much harder now, and it's always been hard, and being on the set, it's like if you're not the director and actor, you're just a producer, and and you've done your job, you're just kind of on the set and everything's going smooth, and it's cold and boring, and so for me, I really love that development process and talking about story, and that's what I do at work, and that's what I do if I'm developing projects. For me, that's what's fun, and I love to do it with people who do it. It's like I get to work with people that are making movies, like that's what they do, and they make movies that win Oscars or change the world or impact culture, and so for me, that's I think maybe one day when I'm old and I look back on it, I'll think, wow, it's like somebody like Denzel Washington. He truly, he's like a cultural icon, and
Uh-huh.
I don't think I ever realized that he was given the AFI Life Achievement Award
Uh-huh.
um, a few years ago, and I went to that event, and they brought up everybody from Cicely Tyson to Julia Roberts to Chadwick Boseman, coming up and just speaking so much about Denzel, and but not just about his work, but how he has influenced them as artists or as people, and again from a culture, because like as a white boy, that isn't something that I necessarily, or okay, an old white man might be a little more believable. Like that is not something that maybe I'm privy to. And so to sort of hear all that, and so it's pretty cool, to kind of have, but that tiny smidgen, splinter of a role in that.
That's really phenomenal, and I work with a lot of filmmakers, and I get to work on their with them on their scripts. I get to see the process of
Right.
how making fundamental changes, and I also feel as though well, let's work on getting the script right because that's not costing us any money, you know,
Right.
and and I'm very very proud of my clients and their work and their writing, and but my clients are making movies too, so we raise money, we make
Right.
movies,
Right. Right.
and it's not easy. I like your word grind. It's not easy, but I had a film come out 2 days ago and another film coming out in a couple of weeks, so it's working.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's like, look, people are getting movies made.
Yes,
They're getting movies made. Movies are being made.
yes,
It's but but it's harder. The rules are changing a little bit, things are shifting, and the business, it's like the business is sort of back on sea legs again, as it's sort of trying to figure itself out a little bit.
Do you mean coming out of COVID? Do you mean
Coming out of COVID, going into streamers, the streaming industry, it has definitely sort of flipped the process on its head a little bit. And like a lot of people will say, oh, is Hollywood worried about the streamers? And I'm like, no, because Hollywood is the streamers. But the business itself is changing. The way people do business is changing. The way people make money is changing. And when the way people make money changes, then you know that the business is going to change.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. I want to open it up to questions. I find I keep wanting to talk about Denzel's performance in the tragedy Macbeth. I wrote about it a few weeks ago because
what a beautiful movie too. Just
I'm
a beautiful, like what a but what an amazing job Joel Cohen did on that, and no Oscar nomination for Best Picture. Go figure.
I know, but it was Denzel Washington's performance I found the most extraordinary. And what I wrote about it was I said, having seen so many Macbeths over my lifetime, and Macbeth is usually presented as this great lord who becomes king, and Denzel to me played him as a very weak man.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
So fascinating,
and
I did so too. Of the time, so of our time.
It was definitely it was an approach that I hadn't seen before. Right. We've seen many versions of Macbeth, right? And so so it's great that they found something to bring to it that was new, and it's amazing considering the play is 500-600 years old.
Right. But I found it was so contemporary. The weakness in, obviously we have Putin now, but the weakness of those men he just did an amazing job. I want everybody to see it. So
it's on Apple Plus TV.
Yes. So Juliet, lovely to see you. What is your question?
Hi Joanne, good to see you. Hi Christopher, it's really great to meet you.
Is your name really Juliet Romeo?
Yes.
Did they do that purposefully?
My grandmother named me, so they say it was a coincidence.
Okay, all right. It's great. It works.
It works.
By the way, it's about time Juliet gets top billing over Romeo.
I could say, of course, yes. I've been saying that forever. About time. I found this really interesting as a writer, especially when you started talking about the streaming services. And a lot of times in the past, the writers, especially in writers' rooms, and even in feature films, we kind of get the short end of the stick. And I feel like now with streaming services, it seems more that we have as much control as, with TV series. How can we kind of be ahead of the curve and what is happening, like in the changes that's happening? Do you have any suggestions on how we can prepare ourselves so that we are kind of more in control of our work than we were in the past?
I'm still trying to figure that out, as I think everybody in the industry is. We are, in a sense now, we're like pioneers on the Mayflower. We're sort of coming to a new land, and so for me right now, all that I'm doing is I am continuing to do what I'm passionate about, and I'm just trying to pivot as I get all of this new information, like, oh, you don't do it this way anymore. All of a sudden they do it this way, or so I'm just doing a lot of pivoting. So I think my advice would be flexible. That's just be flexible right now, and but stay your course. because we really can't predict. I just don't know. I don't have a clue what's in store for this business in a week.
Do you think it's still important to be in LA?
I really think since sort of the birth of the internet, I've not really been a proponent of having to be in LA. I think if you want to write in TV, a lot of TV is in New York and LA, but rooms now are on Zoom, and so I don't really think it matters. The reason to be in a place like LA is to network, because everybody's here. And so, but the truth is that I meet a lot of writers who come out here because they have to be in LA, and then they're in their apartment all day writing and they don't meet anybody. So they're not networking. So if you're going to do that, you might as well just have stayed where you were. It doesn't make any sense. So that would be, I think, really one of the biggest reasons to be in LA. But now you can network this way. I mean, you and I are networking right now. So, and you're not in LA, or I don't know, maybe you are in LA, but we're not in the same room at least. And so, yeah, look, if it's easy for you to come out, then come on out. But it's not that easy for people to just get up and move to LA. And it's an expensive city, and it's getting crazier. And the key is that if you're writing great stuff and you're able to get it to people because you have a network, then you can do that anywhere. And then if you have to come to LA, then you hop on a plane, you come to LA, and then you go back home.
That's great advice.
Thank you, Juliet. Great to see you. Okay, so Tatiana, great to see you too.
Hi, Joanne. Hi, Christopher. Nice to meet you. I'm on your group, and
yes, I recognize your name. Of course.
I said I was coming. Great, thank you. Thanks for doing this talk. My name is Tatiana Bacchus. I'm in the Philadelphia region, so I'm so happy about what you just said. I'm an actor and filmmaker in early post on a feature-length documentary about a Haitian master painter. So I love that you did narrative and doc. I got this wonderful opportunity to write a screenplay. An executive asked me to consider writing a screenplay about the Black experience. Again, lucky enough to sell it to a production company, first one. And I am now in the enviable position of getting notes. I think it's something that you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
Often contradictory notes. One of the early things that they said was like lean in, because I'm Haitian American, so lean into the culture. And I think from a production standpoint, they're having some difficulty finding Haitian actors and things like that. So now the note has kind of become lean back from that. And in some ways they don't quite understand. So there's enough of the notes that I understand in terms of tightening skill as a new writer that I can fix and can get some support with. My question is, how do you handle they don't know what they want until they see it note?
Right.
What advice do you have for kind of that the mandates are shifting? This person was at this studio, now they're gone. What's other than pivoting, being flexible, being a team player, being kind, any suggestions on how to approach that?
I would really try to communicate. So, whoever your contact person is, whoever perhaps the lead exec is, or whoever it is that you're dealing with mostly on a regular basis, open up and communicate, because it's a team. It shouldn't be the writers versus the executives. It's a team. So if there's something that's not tracking, something that you don't understand, something that you need more clarity on, you need to ask.
Okay.
And I never mind, so like if I'm working with writers, they text me 24 hours a day if they have to, and like, that's the job. Right. So because I want to be there to support the writer, I want to support the writer. So And I think a lot of people who are in the executive position, they want to do the same thing too. Sometimes they are fearful that they're going to step on the writer's toes. You just never know. So I just say, ask questions. That's all. Talk to people.
Right.
It's like it's a really basic, simple answer, but sometimes that's all you need is a basic, simple answer.
I'll take it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations, Tatiana. She's actually working on 2 scripts that she's.
Thanks, Joanne.
So you're busy. You're busy.
I can't write fast enough, is what the exec said. Write faster, write faster. Thank you.
All righty.
Roberta, go ahead and ask your question. You're muted.
I'm so sorry. Hi, Joanne, and thank you, Christopher, so much for doing this for us.
Hey, Roberta.
I am a faith-based writer. Do you think at any point in his career, Denzel Washington would consider doing a faith-based movie? Because I've seen him talk about how strong his faith is. He is a Christian.
Yeah, look, I would say, I understand that faith-based movies have maybe like a certain criteria in regards to like, they have to mention Jesus Christ X amount of times or, this or that. But I would say that almost every movie that, I'll go on a limb and say that every movie that Denzel has directed has been faith-based in some way, maybe not exactly in the definition of the faith-based community, but Journal for Jordan is sort of, in my opinion, kind of very, very faith-based. And if the role is right, to me, I don't think that any actor should do a movie because it's in a certain genre. I think that they should do a movie because the role speaks to them and it's a project that they want to work with. So the answer to that question would be sure, if it is the right project.
Thank you.
I think Antoine Fisher, which was the first movie he directed,
Sure.
was a faith-based movie, but not in the context that we talk about faith-based movies,
Right?
I mean, Christian movies, but it's
Right.
definitely
That's right. Right.
faith-based.
Right. Maybe it's more like spiritually based, right? In some ways, because Denzel's got a worldwide audience, and so I think a lot of actors, especially at that level, they want to embrace all faiths, and so they perhaps want to make rather than a faith-based movie, they want to make an all faith-based movie.
Interesting. So we've passed the top of the hour, so I just wanted to remind you, Christopher, that you're perfectly free to leave, and if you want to take a couple more questions.
Sure, of course, sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You're very generous. Ralph, go ahead.
Hello, Chris. Great talk. Appreciate you coming. I was really curious about you saying that the landscape is shifting so drastically and everything's changing. You also said it's even harder than ever to make movies, and that sounds scary because it seems so hard already to get anything made. So I wondered if I could ask you to dig in a little bit more about that and how a writer should respond in terms of like, should one just start to give up entirely on the Hollywood aspect and just go try and make your movie on your own? Or because I'm also hearing from writers in Hollywood how hard it is to get any kind of traction. And then the other question is, if it's so hard to get a movie set up, which is I assume what you mean in terms of making a movie, not the process of making the film. In that case, is it more sensible for a writer to just seek out producers who know exactly what they want? This is the kind of stuff that needs to get made, so just go write this, rather than pitching specs. So that's my question.
Right. Look, it's I work at an agency, and so any of the big agencies, I see the way projects are put together. Obviously, an agency like CAA or ICM or WME, they have all of the mechanisms to sort of bring together and
The package.
and make movies as a result of that package. But it takes a lot of minds to do that. I'm always amazed at the process of putting these things together and how intricate that it can be. And just now, as a producer outside of the agency, I'm just finding that there's a tougher armor, and that it's harder to sort of break through than it's just, I don't know what it is. People are more, they're more suspicious. They're using more discretion in regards to even what they want to read. Like in the old days, you could call up an agency and ask about a client's availability. And they'd say, yeah, he's available Q4. He's tech avail Q1 of next year. Now they say, why don't you send us an email with all the information first?
Right. So everybody's being super guarded, and
I don't know what it is, right?
Yeah, I get that impression too.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange. And like you hear constantly all the time, content, we need
that's what
more
I'm hearing,
content.
these two conflicting stories.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, we need more content. Okay, so here's the content. Yeah, we don't want your content.
Right.
Because it's like the content they want like
Stars.
Tom Cruise attached to your content.
Exactly. The Rock. Yeah.
And The Rock attached to your content. And now you have content. Prior to that, you don't have any content. So I think that has been a big issue. Look, should you go out and make your own film? If you want to produce, or you want to be a writer / director, but absolutely. If you just aspire to write, I don't always know if it's a great idea to all of a sudden try to become a producer or try to direct, because God forbid, you could end up with a $50,000 movie that's a piece of garbage. And I've seen a lot of them. And so I think that you have to be honest with sort of who you are and where you are and what it is that you can do. But are you a filmmaker? I mean, are you a...
Yeah, I'm more of a writer-director type,
okay, yeah,
as well as an artist, art director as well. But I suppose part of my question is it still a reasonable strategy to try and go after a talent and try and get your script to them? Since you're saying you've got to attach a star, if you could get your script to Christian Bale or something, and some by miracle he likes it, is that still a valid path to try and get something set up, or is that?
I think it is, yes, but again, it seems to be more difficult than ever. Somebody was just telling me the other day, and I was reading on the Inside Pitch where somebody had put a movie together and she had a few Emmy Award-winning stars for the movie, and then when they took the package out, they were like, we need bigger stars than that. So it really is it's really tough, because then even if you make a movie, even if you make a $50,000 movie, it doesn't mean that you'll ever find distribution for it. But if you make a $50,000 movie, it doesn't take all that much necessarily to make your money back, right? It's if you're making a $5 million movie.
That's exactly what Joanne teaches us. So yeah, you're preaching to the choir.
Okay, I see.
We've learned that part. Yeah.
Right, exactly right. It's the more money you spend, clearly, then the more involved you need to get with talent and this and that. The streamers, like if you want to take a package to Netflix, you got to bring something that they want, unless it's a project that they develop, so.
And that's kind of part of my question as well. The way you're saying that maybe they're taking charge more of development themselves, then how do you try to get involved in that? Is that just by having good writing samples and a good agent, I suppose?
Yes, I would say that it's definitely about both. I still think having representation is really important, and especially for new writers, thinking about managers rather than agents, and going that route. And there are, of course, some managers that also produce. I think it's especially important if you're not here in town, right? Because if you're not here in town, then having a rep who is in town, who can be your voice, is certainly helpful to you. But it is, it's just so weird, because as the landscape gets bigger and bigger and bigger, everything seems to be getting smaller. And so I don't get it. I think a lot of people are just trying to figure it out. I just think it's like growing pains, and eventually everything will sort of balance out. And we're just in a weird time.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your answers.
Thanks, Rolf. There were a couple of people who had their hands up, but they've gone, so maybe they're not able to speak. Oh, Miranda, you're back. Okay, Miranda, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Joanne. Sorry, I just didn't want to eat up Christopher's time. I know he said he had to go, or you said that we were at the hour, but thank you for taking me. I wanted to just jump on and say, Christopher, you helped me clarify a pitch. You did a presentation with my local WIFTA chapter, and you helped me clarify a pitch that I had for a docuseries that actually is now in the hands of We TV. So thank you.
Great.
I wanted
Good
to say
for you.
thank you. Thank you, because I bombed, and you were so kind. And Miss Joanne has trained me up to be better than I was that day. But just nerves get the better of me always. So let me get to my question now, because I'm sort of back to the same pickle. My baby, the thing that I really want to get made, and I'm serving as a producer, I'm also the writer, is my first feature. I have an awesome team of writers, and it's just been a lament to get the script right. I had 2 A-listers. Barreling through to my question is, I now have an opportunity to meet with, and sorry, just to clarify, we do have self-raised some funding and had donations for funding. Obviously, this is independent, not in any studio system. However, I have 2 A-listers, one that I had an actual letter of interest with, which helped me to get some promising of pre-sales. And I may be saying it wrong, but I'm just trying to recall how things were set up. Make a long story short, I now have an opportunity to meet at a dinner meeting with a prominent member of something who spearheaded a person who spearheaded the Black Bank Fund, who actually just had a meeting with Denzel, and it was like on camera, this big thing, a couple months ago. But here's my question: should I wait to accept this opportunity until I have a more weighty producer on board with me, because I'm still kind of new at all of this stuff? Or should I barrel through to the opportunity, keeping in mind that my A-lister, I am in jeopardy of losing because of scheduling? So what do I do?
I always sort of feel like in this business, she who hesitates is last. And it's risky, right? You know, it's risky, but if you go and you make a connection with this person, because look, ultimately, that should always be first and foremost what you're trying to do. It shouldn't be about how can I get a piece of business from this person? How can this person make me money? You should be trying to connect with people, like as human beings. So if he feels like maybe the project's not quite ready, he's more than willing to revisit it later on because you guys connected. So always go with that approach. It's about it, because this is truly a business about human connection. We tend to work with people that we know, people that we like, people that we respect. And so that's really why you should be taking the meeting first and foremost, because always remember, like 99% of all meetings end up at a dead end. I've
Right.
taken a gazillion meetings that have meant nothing.
Okay.
And you stop and you think about that. You're like, oh my God, all those hours of my life lost to these dead end meetings. And, but if you're connecting with somebody and you're creating a relationship, that's what's most important. So I say, if the opportunity has been presented to you, you go for it.
And that's what I've been doing. I just always worry that me leading with my heart and with my story, which is something you and I discussed, you won't remember, but we discussed it before. I mean, so much so it's like I'm remembering these people's birthdays genuinely, not from a sociopathic way, but like sincerely wanting to connect with people. I just
Right.
love people. That's what opened some doors. And I just don't want to look like an idiot when I put my foot through. So as long as I focus on the connection, you're saying that that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and you know something,
Okay.
look, if you have a great project and people like the project, somebody, if they feel that maybe you're too green, they might say, look, this is a great project, but you need somebody who's got a little more experience. Maybe we can find somebody for you. Maybe you can go out and try to find somebody. I certainly thought about that with my current project, that maybe I need to bring on a producer that's got a bigger name, you know, because I don't have any name as a producer. And so to bring in a person that maybe can get a little more respect, but then that's hard, because if I'm a guy with no name, how do I get a producer to? I mean, it's such a vicious circle. It's really hard. But it's all about those relationships. I have a huge network out here because I've spent 25 years in the business, and these people have gone off to do so many different things. They're agents, they're managers, they're producers, they're studio execs. One of my former coworkers runs Paramount now, you know. So it's like you can fall on them, you know, you have them for support. And so that's what you should always be doing, right? For every hour you spend writing, you should spend an hour networking somehow, trying to increase that. It's the only real way you can get stuff done in this business. You can't do it as an island. You just can't. So, so who knows? Maybe you might have to bring somebody on eventually. But it seems like you're getting a little bit of traction, at least right now. So go with it.
Thank you so much.
Good luck, Miranda.
Awesome. So maybe we'll take John's question. Last question. Go ahead, John.
Hi, Joanne. Thank you for this. Hi, Christopher.
Hey, John.
Hi, my name is John. I'm from Trinidad. And
Trinidad.
Yeah.
I was there. I fell into a waterfall at Trinidad.
Which one was it? Do you remember?
I don't know. All I know that it was very wet.
Yeah, that's good. You should come back.
I bet it was Blue Basin.
Well, I'm a DOP, I'm a DP and a producer here for a production company in Trinidad, and we are working on a big story, a documentary on the creator of soca. And my question is, I know you were talking about, I mean, thank you for your story about, you know, your humbling beginnings and all that, and with your son and all that. I connect with that very much so, because I have a son as well, two boys. And what happened is that my question is, I know you go through all of these scripts to determine which one is the best one for screenplay writing for films, but I'm doing a documentary, and how do you, documentary is a work in progress, as you would know, with the script writing. So how do you determine, how do you get someone like Denzel to narrate your documentary? You know?
Right. You know, it's about, I would say, having a really good pitch deck, maybe having a little bit of the doc that you can share, like a sizzle reel.
Yes, I have all those things. I have those things, yeah.
And of course, I think always trying to find somebody that might have a connection to the material, that might be able to understand the material. Because, you know, if you're going for like an A-lister, they're clearly not going to get any money doing this documentary. And so that in turn takes away from their time where they can be making a lot of money. And so it needs to be something that I think resonates with them.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so it's really just about putting together a good pitch package but really trying to connect to the heart of that person.
Yeah, I feel you when you say that, you know, most documentaries don't make money. But my aim here, what I've been working on is getting my top clients here on the country, because I'm working for an award-winning production company, and we have some very, very great clients who would back this with financially. So what happened is that we also getting the government on board, you know. So it's really, I'm not looking at it as a pro bono, but for hire, you know. But I am a nobody in the film industry, just like when you're talking about, you know, you even have to hire producers to get somebody attention on it. And this is where I'm at. And I was just wondering, how do you get, and because I always thought that Denzel would be perfect for it, because of, you know, just like a past filmmaker said, that he's film-based, you know, like the Book of Eli was also somewhat film-based as well. Great movie. And I just think that Denzel would be perfect for this role, you know, because of what it represents as well for our nation.
Right. You know, then it's just about, again, putting that package together, being very specific in regards to the offer. If there's money, you know, you make an offer to the actor, you stress the time, the place, you know, sort of all of that stuff. And then you just send it to their rep, you know, you send it to their agent, and then they make that determination.
Right.
That's how that goes. But keep in mind, you know, actors like at that level that Denzel is at, they get a lot of those kinds of offers. You know, everybody wants Denzel or Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks to narrate their documentary. You know, they get, you know, hundreds of those offers a year.
Yes.
And they can only do so many.
Yes.
So, but yeah, you know, but again, you need to be able to show some of the work. Yeah. That is really important, because unless you're an Oscar-winning documentarian where they can look back at your other documentaries, you know, you need to be able to show what it is that you can do. And also, of course, if you have the script. So if they're going to be narrating it, you might actually already have that narration written. Right. And so, you know, it might be wiser to go for the talent after the documentary's been shot rather than before the documentary's been shot.
Yes. Also,
because docs can take years to make, and it's
my third year.
Yeah, I mean, they are a completely different animal, because remember, with the doc, you literally write the script after you shoot the movie.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. You know, right? It's like you go out and you film it, and then you're like, okay, what do we have? How do we do this?
That's right.
You know? So yeah, so it's like you want to go to those A-listers, you got to bring your A game to their level.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
That's always important. Let me just, if I may, very, very quickly, just this amusing story, I think, about my documentary. While we were shooting it, one of the principals in the documentary, this lovely woman, she kept saying, Chris, I think when this is done, it would be perfect for Oprah Winfrey. And And I was just like, oh my God, like having to deal with laymen. They had no concept as to how this business works. Anyway, it isn't like Oprah Winfrey had any kind of platform or had any, she wasn't even in that business. I was like, just, oh my God. And every time, every day, this woman was driving me nuts. And like one day I had to say, I was like, look, this probably isn't it's just not an Oprah Winfrey movie. Even if she had a studio, it's not an Oprah Winfrey movie. We'll be lucky if we get it on like MTV, or something like that. Anyway, in the end, Oprah Winfrey acquired the movie. Like, go figure. Like I had egg on my face, literally. I mean, that's how crazy and unpredictable this business is. It's so insane. So like, you never know, like you never know. So somebody might say, you can't get Tom Hanks to narrate your documentary. That's ridiculous. I don't know. You never know.
Thank you so
And
much.
by the way, as a result, I got to hang out with Oprah at Sundance. She announced the acquisition of our doc at Sundance. She threw a great big party. OWN was just starting up. So clearly when we started the film, there was no OWN, right. And then and just everything changed. So like, that's this business, like the landscape changes under your feet constantly. It's constantly shifting. It's so unpredictable. That's what I love about this business. It's what frustrates me, but it's also what motivates me, is the unpredictability of it.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Thank you so much, Joanne. Appreciate it.
Good luck, John.
Thank you. You too.
So, Christopher, this has just been fabulous. It's rare on these interviews we get to laugh quite that much. So really, really, really appreciate it. And it's so great to hear from a Hollywood insider, and that it's still unpredictable even for you.
For everybody. Even people like Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise, they have passion projects they want to produce that they can't get made. That's the way it is. Everybody in this business struggles. I don't care who you are, how far you are at the top, everybody struggles. That is the nature of this business.
Amazing. But thank you so much. And,
thank you, Joanne.
Lexi's been posting it, but especially for the filmmakers out there who don't know me, please come and talk to me about working together. We raise money and get movies made. That's about as simple as
I need to talk to you.
And yeah, that's what we do. And I'm so proud of my clients. Every single person who asked a question was one of my clients. So just really proud of
Thank you. Thank you, clients.
So thank you, and have a wonderful day. Happy filmmaking, everybody. Thanks again, Christopher.
Thank you, Joanne. It was a pleasure to see you again.
Oh,